Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Ask Andrew show today, Canada's first Facebook live streaming family law question and answer show. My name is Andrew Feldstein, and I'm the principal of the GTA family law firm, Feldstein Family Law Group. Both myself and our entire team practice exclusively in the area of family law. We have offices located in Markham, Vaughan, Oakville, and Mississauga. And today I'm joined by one of our senior associates, Daphna Schwartz. Welcome back to the show, Daphna.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to be here today.
Well, today we're talking, it's the end of June, so we thought it's a good opportunity to talk about co-parenting during the summer. Weather's warm. What does this mean to parents and children who are going through a separation?
So summertime is obviously different than during the year. During the year, kids are in school, kids have extracurricular activities, parents are working, possibly more. So coming into the summer, I think it's important for parents to realize that schedules could change. Children's schedules change depending on what they're going to be doing in the summer. So I think parents really need to, look at that in advance to determine how their schedule could change. And maybe if there's more time that's available to one parent or to the other parent that might be available for the children, and what the children's activities are, which could change the schedule that's in place during the year. So thought needs to go into that, I think, before summertime comes, or sometimes, we put things in to determine whether it's a month before, 2 months before, but I think parents should put their mind to that, whether they already have a parenting schedule in place or they're going to be putting a parenting schedule in place.
So I'm going to start with, people have to give a lot of care to what happens in the summer. A lot of us like to take summer vacations. Usually we like to have our kids in summer vacations. So how do you see your clients planning their summer vacations over the summer?
So I always ask clients that, right? It's important to ask clients, what does it look like for you? Are you taking a week off, 2 weeks off? It's going to be in July, is it going to be in August? Because that's important for them, because usually they want more time with their children if possible. So I think for the viewer, it's important to know that you really need to think about what your schedule is with your work, whether you're self-employed or whether you're working for someone, and what you're able to take off, and be able to then come up with something that works for you and for the children based on their schedule, so you can communicate that to the other parent.
So I always say to people, you have one is the family vacations that's going to happen during the summer. And two, what are the plans for the kids? Are they going to day camp? Are they young that they need daycare and day camp isn't an option? Are the kids going away to overnight camp? Because they all play different roles in the way you structure the family summer. So if the kids aren't in camp, I think you'd agree with me then, you're trying to figure out the party's vacations and whether you alter the schedule for the summer outside of vacations or whether you keep the same schedule. Is that how you would do it?
Yes, definitely. I think the first focus is the children. What are the plans for the children? So oftentimes, I will always ask, and I think it's important for the parents to be able to communicate, what have the children normally been doing, right? If this is coming into office, separation, and you're trying to figure out a schedule, first look at the children. What have they been doing? Do they normally go to camp? Is it day camp? As you said, is it overnight camp? Are they going to continue that? Obviously, you have to look at finances, because that could change things, whether now there's overnight camp continuing or not. Is there other camps for the children? And of course, their ages change. So sometimes important might not look the same right now. It might look the same, different, in a couple of years. But depending on the age of the children as well, at that time, what is it that they want to do? And so I think that parents need to first focus on that. I think that sometimes, there's a tendency to, look more at their own time or what they can accommodate, or, when the other parent is suggesting something, to really try to focus more on the children's activities in camp and what's best for them. And then the parents can see whether they can work their schedule around that, and also based on vacation time that they can take and what their plans may be for the summer. I mean, sometimes parents want to take children away for a month. They want to go visit family. And so does that work within the children's schedule, and also for the other parent as well, because things are different now?
Well, there's a real balancing act that takes place, because sometimes we'll have a situation where one parent, it's a recently separated couple, will say, well, the kids have always gone to camp all summer. And that's 7 weeks of summer, and that's going to continue. And the other parent says, but hold on a second. We used to always do a 1 or 2 week vacation as a family for the rest of the summer. That doesn't work anymore. So it doesn't mean what's always happened in the past will happen in the future, because it's also possible you may enroll the children for 4 weeks of summer camp and 2 weeks of vacation time with each parent, which gets to one of the other problems, which is what's the parenting time outside vacations? Or what you said is somebody may say, every summer we went to Greece because that's where my parents were, and or maybe both parents are in Greece, grandparents that is, and they plan time away traveling and visiting family members. And all of these things you have to understand, there isn't necessarily, and I say this for the viewers, a right or a wrong. Right. It's about what's in the best interest of the children and what works for the family. I've had situations where I take Greece as an example because I think I had one not in the not too distant past where both grandparents were in Greece. So they both flew to Greece, shared the airfare where the kids went down with one parent, home with the other parent, and they divided up their summer vacation time in Greece instead of doing it here. That worked amazing for the kids because they got to see all the grandparents. They got great vacation time. It was a great experience. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody's grandparents are from the same country. But it's about the underlying principle of what's best for the kids, being equitable to everybody, and balancing various interests. One parent shouldn't be thinking that my family is from England, and every summer I would go off to England with the kids before the separation, and I'm doing that after. I mean, do you ever see people taking those kind of positions?
Yes, definitely. And I think that I always tell them, I try to tell clients, and everyone is different, but some, as you're saying, to really put thought into this, because as you're saying, when there is family, in other countries, or they've done, different things as in traveling, when it's pretty standard where, families are home in the summer, kids are just off to camp and parents are working and maybe they take a week vacation, that might be easier. And so for them to, plan that together or put that into an agreement, separation agreement, parenting plan, you don't have to put much thought into it. I'll take a week in July, you'll take a week in August, and the kids will go to camp, and that might be simple. But as you're saying, for families that do travel a lot or have extended family in different countries, I think really a lot of thought needs to go in, because if they, put a parenting plan in place and don't think about it, really might come into a situation, hold on, it's now May or June, and, our agreement just says I get 1 week or 2 weeks, but I want to go away for a month. And that's when sort of, I think, things arise, and that's when conflicts can happen, and when there's not enough thought put into it. And so I think it's important, for viewers to understand that it's good to discuss with your lawyer, as it is during the year, or any type of, holiday time or certain holidays that are important for you or your family. The same with summer. That's important. If any vacation time is important, really think about it and try to put that, forward, and to get some sort of agreement in place. It's never going to be perfect. Things will always happen and come up. And, it's hard to tell a client. We always say, look, you're putting into an agreement, the best you can to make it go as an easy transition. And hopefully that works. And, there's not much, you'll look at the terms and you'll agree to it, and you can sort of tweak things along, and maybe it makes sense, and you don't have to really change many things. And for some, it doesn't. So that's why I think it's important to think about it in advance. And I think also, you need to think about when summer's coming and vacation time is coming, and often we do put that into a parenting plan, how much notice you're going to give to the other parent, and how far in advance you're going to talk about the summer vacation, especially when each one, wants a week off, week with the children, 2 weeks with the children. How far in advance are you going to do that, and how are you going to communicate that to the other parent? Because that, I think, is really important as well.
And that's one of the things we often have to get into in drafting an agreement is, what's the process? Some clients will come to us and say, oh, don't worry, we get along, it won't be a problem, we'll negotiate it every year. And I like to say to those parents, that's a big, big mistake. Hopefully you'll be right. Hopefully you'll never have to look at the separation agreement. And hopefully you'll be able to do just what your objective is. But how often we see somebody who thinks they have their 5-year-old and 3-year-old, and they know exactly how their life is going to be, and then they repartner. and they want to take a vacation with their partner and their kids, but they can't get any agreement. And the other side intentionally wants to undermine the ability of that person to vacation with the new partner and their kids because they don't like them. And these are things we actually see. So it's really important at the time of negotiating a resolution to create a system of rules that people can fall back on so that if there isn't an agreement, they know where they stand. What are the typical types of rules that we would talk about in something like that, Daphna?
So I think it's important to put in, the first step is, okay, how far in advance are we going to discuss this? Are you each going to, is this going to be a month in advance, 2 months in advance? So I think a timeline, first of all, is important. As you said, some clients will just say, and we hear it all the time, oh, it's not a problem, school will be over and I'll just, talk to the other parent and we'll figure it out. And, that's when we say, as you said, I have it all the time. I say, you know what? I think it's better we put in a timeline, maybe a month before or 2 months before. Let's put something in there that you can communicate with the other parent about what your plans may be or what it is that you can foresee for the summer based on, as a camp or what the children's activities are going to be and based on what vacation time you want. The other important thing I think, as you said, is the communication. How is it going to be communicated? Okay. You're just going to pick up the phone and talk about it. Well, I said this, you said that. So oftentimes we put in, look, maybe you want to communicate by, and we look at how do you communicate in general with the other parent? Do you communicate by email? Do you communicate by text message? Do you communicate through a different app, My Family Wizard or whatever the app for the communication is? So it's also important, I think, to think about how it is you want to communicate that with the other parent. And so going forward what the process is and what the plan is. Is the process is, okay, by May 1st, parent A is going to then, give their timeline or what their vacation plan will be for July or for August. And then the other parent will have a week or two to communicate that back to the other parent in writing. And oftentimes we make a plan where we say, okay, it's not fair. Maybe each of you should rotate that. So, some people like to go away in July. Some people like to go away in August. I've had some clients who can only go away in August. And so I think sometimes you need to then be fair, as you said, it needs to be fair with both parents. And maybe we rotate that. So maybe, parent A will get first choice, an odd number of years and parent B an even number of years. And, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very simple, just who's going to choose in which year so that it's a fair process for both and for the children. And then the children also should know, I think it's important, especially at a certain age, what to expect. So they also know, what, it's this year, mom gets to decide if we're going to go away with her in July or in August. And maybe, it's this year, we can talk to dad. Dad's going to decide where we're going to go in July or August and then the children can have that discussion with a parent as well. So I think it's not just, for the parents, but I think it's also good for the children as well, especially as they get older, to also have some consistency or to know what may happen for their summer. So they know as well. And the parents can all plan.
So what we're talking about is you pick a day in agreement that parent A has to tell parent B by what their vacation days are. And 1 year parent A gets first choice, 1 year parent B gets first choice. And if they don't make their selection by that date, the other parent can jump in and make their selection. And this can even, believe it or not, be a source of conflict for some families. I know for myself as a divorced parent, I would give my ex the vacation date sometimes 9, 10 months, 12 months in advance because my calendar books up very quickly. And if I want a vacation, I usually put it in my calendar about a year in advance. So I like to be very early. Then you have other people who will say, but I work at a company and that company won't allow me to pick my vacation days to a certain date. So you really have to know how to work with people. The other way is what Daphna said, is sometimes people have permanent vacation weeks. They say, my family has always had a big get together at a cottage. And it's the first 2 weeks of July every year. I have all my cousins and we have this great big family get together. I need the first 2 weeks of July every year. The other person at the time of negotiating the agreement may say, okay, that's fine. You can have the first 2 weeks of July every year, but I want these 2 weeks, whether it's the next 2 weeks in July or August, or I want to be able to pick whatever weeks. So there's some trading that can take place to make these things work, but it's important to have it written down because if it's not, it won't happen. And another thing that Daphna said, which I think is really important, is that, and this is a mistake I didn't fully appreciate till I did my own agreement when my kids were, I believe, 10 and 8 years old. You do an agreement when you're thinking of your kids at the lens of the age they're at. So I remember we made all of the exchanges early in the morning, because when kids were 10 and 8, they were waking up early in the morning. You know, now my son, who will be 18 shortly, he'll wake up at noon on a Saturday. So he's old enough to do what he wants with his feet, but by the same token, if he's going to follow that schedule, which he does, he's not getting up early enough. If something said 10 o'clock in the morning, like on Father's Day, come to my house at 10 a.m., he's not up. So I give that as an example because some of the things that we plan today when the kids are young won't work for tomorrow. Some of the other things we have to think about is, are the weeks going to be consecutive or non-consecutive? Are we going to, some people say we want to do week on, week off for the whole summer. Some families will say 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. That's part of the age, because if you have little kids, 2 weeks may be too long away from mom or dad. So I don't know, what's your feelings on some of those points, Daphna?
I agree. I've had clients, tell me the same idea. And as I touched on before, I think, and sometimes it's hard for parents, I think, to think in the future, what things will look like in a couple of years. They're trying to deal right now, with the separation and how things are right now. They're not sure. They can't think, well, maybe in a year or two, my kids may want to go to summer camp, or maybe they may not want to go away for a month anymore. These type of things. So, it's always important, and I think it's important for viewers, and I'll tell clients, that's why we always have also, paragraphs, clauses in a separation agreement. Things will change, as with regular parenting schedules, summer parenting schedules, children get older, things may change. And, we need to put clauses in there to determine how you'll discuss those changes. As certain dispute resolution clauses, will you be able to discuss it together and revise your parenting plan? Will you go off to a mediator if you need some assistance in coming up with a solution so that you're not arguing or fighting about it? So things will change. And I agree, if you're able to kind of look a little bit into the future and you're able to come up with a plan that says, okay, as kids get older, and I've had clients actually say that to me, well, what happens? My kids are small now. What happens in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years when they want to do this? And, that's great. And if the other parent's willing to discuss that now, maybe we put some wording in there that will help them so they don't end up in some sort of conflict in a couple of years, and they can deal with that right now. And also to touch on what you said, when we say, well, what type of schedules are there? Is it 1 week off, 1 week on, 2 weeks on? I have clients and who will come and say to me two things. And I think, Andrew, you should, talk about this on your view when your clients come and say to you. I get two. So one is, well, why should the schedule change in the summer? So I have many clients who say, I think the schedule should remain the summer. If I have primary care during the week and the other parent has, whatever, 2 days during the week, 3 days other week, or maybe it's some sort of shared schedule, I think it should stay the same in the summer. Why should that change? So I have, there's some that have a mindset like that. And there's some that say, well, hold on, it's the summer now, whereas maybe, it's not split during the year. Now it should be split. And the other parent said, well, why? Why should the schedule change at all? So there's this view, I think, of summertime from parents, and should the schedule change the same? Should it be completely different? And then I think if it is completely different, then I think you'll get some parents to say, well, hold on, if the schedule is completely different in the summer, why can't we do that completely different schedule now during the year too? And so I like to tell parents, we got to look, things change with children and activities in school, and can you accommodate? So I get those sort of two issues that arise for some parents when they're trying to figure out summer. And I just want to get your take on that as well, if you hear that from clients.
Well, I hear it lots of times, and I usually say to people, you start with summer is different. Kids aren't in school. Kids don't have responsibilities to be ready for class the next day. Kids don't have assignments due. Kids don't have homework due. It's the time of year we as parents try to take summer vacations as a family. So at the starting point, the starting principle is every parent is going to get vacation time. Vacation time, I will say this to everyone, does not mean you need to get in your car and go to a cottage. It doesn't mean that you have to get on a plane and fly somewhere. It can be a parent taking time, enjoying their vacation time with their child. And that means they may not go anywhere. And it may mean during that vacation time, the other parent won't see the child. And that's all okay, because what we try to do with vacation time is balance it out both ways. So some parents will say, well, we each want 1 week summer vacation time during the summer with the kids. I'll tell you right now, if you walked into court, that'll never fly unless there's some really exceptional reasons. At a minimum, I see each parent is going to get 2 weeks. If the kids are younger, it may not be consecutive, because that may create some problems in the children being away from the other parent for too long. But as the kids get a little older, each parent will get 2 weeks. Do you agree with me on that, Daphna? At a minimum?
At a minimum. I think that 1 week is a bit, you know,
It's going to be light.
unless they can accommodate it, of course, unless the parent is
Yeah.
not available.
Yeah, if the parent's not available, or the children are really young and the parent hasn't had much to do with the child in a while and they're being reintroduced. There's always special circumstances that could change it. But in the normal situation, you're probably each going to get 2 weeks. Summer vacation is probably about 8 to 9 weeks during the summer. So the question is, what do you do with the balance of those weeks? That's really what it boils down to. And that's where the question becomes, is it the regular schedule? Is it a different schedule? And that you look at, again, on a case-by-case basis. In a lot of cases, I would have it being the normal schedule. But some people like to say, you know what, Andrew, I have a cottage. I want to work at my cottage all summer. So I would much rather, if we have equal time, change the schedule from the usual 2-2-5 or something along those lines to 1 week, 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. So I can have the kids up at the cottage. We can have a week together. I drop the kids back in the city. I go back to my cottage and I go to work. And that may work. And for some families, it may be great. And the point is, these are things that you have to work out, because whether you were doing a 2-2-5 schedule for the balance of the summer or week on, week off, neither one is right. Neither one is wrong. At the end of the day, it's part of the dynamics of what's going to be negotiated, with the backdrop of, and I've had judges say this, unless there's some exceptional reasons, vacation time is going to be equal. And it's a question of how it ends up equal, how you get there. May not be equal right away, because kids may be young, one parent may be out of the picture, one parent may not be available. But if everybody's available, ready, willing, and able, it's going to be pretty close to equal. And it's a question of how you get there. And it's a question of what works best for different families, because it's different for different people. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. And that was my next point on that, is that what works. I think that when you're, I always tell clients, and I think when people come into this, they need to understand that when you're, negotiating and you're starting to think about what a parenting schedule looks like, you have that option. You're not in court, you're not litigating this. Try to communicate with each other, because at the end of the day, it's exactly that. It's what's best for the family, what's best for the children. And as you said, clients will say, well, what is the proper schedule? Is it, what's standard? I mean, we can always tell clients what's standard. So the shared arrangement for younger kids is, as you said, is a 2-2-5, is it the 2-2 every other weekend schedule? Is a week on, week off schedule if it's going to be shared? If it's not, is it, 1 week and then, 1 week with the parent and the other parent has every other weekend, or, sometime during the week. There are standard schedules that there has been, over the years in research, and with what works for children coming in out of a separation, what works best for children. And that's generally what the standard is. But you always have the option of what works best for the family, for both of you, for your children. And you can do that. I've had clients who design very interesting schedules that I look at them and I'm like, oh, how's that going to work? But it works for them. And that's great. And sometimes, very often I'll tell clients, maybe you need help with that. You can go to a mediator, or the two of you can communicate that together directly. That's great. Work on a schedule that will be best with guidance. Of course, we can always give guidance as to what the norm, as we say, is, or what the standards are, what works for families and for children of certain ages. Because once you can't agree and you're going to end up in court over these issues, there are certain schedules that judges will impose. Of course, judges will look at, what parents can accommodate. What is their work schedule, morning, so they may, of course, craft some sort of schedule within the normal schedules that work based on that. But, there is a standard, as you said. Is it 2 weeks in the summer each? Is it, whatever that summer schedule looks like? And if you're not there and you're still able to negotiate, you're outside of court, you're working on a parenting schedule, you can look at what works for the family based on your circumstances. And I always say, if you can come to an agreement together that works best, that's the agreement that's going to continue to work. And you'll be able to co-parent and communicate when there's any other changes as the children get older. Or as you said, work schedules change, or maybe now one parent who had 1 week off now gets 2 weeks off and they want to get extra time. So if you can communicate that, that's the best way to do it. And that will then set forward being able to co-parent and communicate in the future when you need changes in a summer schedule, I believe.
And parents have to be realistic. When one parent says, I want to go visit my family for 4 weeks and go abroad with the kids, they better appreciate that means the other parent is getting 4 weeks vacation time, whether they're working or not working. That parent can enroll the children in daycare, in camp, daycare, have a grandparent watching them. And even as part of their vacation time, they may not be able to take all the time off work. I don't think a court's going to necessarily penalize that parent. It's just a question of the children may have more fun when the parent's off and they're going somewhere. But don't think you're going to go away for 4 weeks. My former spouse is going to take 2 weeks vacation time and we're going to divide up the other 2 weeks. And don't sit there and then complain that it's not fair that my former spouse is home. My kids are with them for 4 weeks and I don't get to see them. If you want to take that 4-week trip and they're willing to consent to it, like anything else in life, there's a price you pay for it. And that price is there's going to be 4 weeks the kids are with the other parent. And you got to live with that. So there's different viewpoints on these kinds of issues, but at the end of the day, it's all about trying to have fairness. When I separated, my kids were in overnight camp. That left us with, I think, 3 weeks after overnight camp in the summer. We each took a week with the kids and then we went back to the regular schedule. I would have liked more than a 1 week vacation, but I knew the kids wanted to be going to overnight camp at that stage. When my son stopped going overnight camp, my daughter continued. There was more time for vacations if I wanted with him. So things change, dynamics change, you need to work with it. And the thing we've touched on and we haven't really discussed, which we should before we run out of time, is the importance of putting this in writing. Because what you don't want to have is both parents saying they have the same vacation time and fighting over who it was. When it's your year to choose first, put it in writing like Daphna said. If you communicate on an app, do it on the app. It's a great place to use these communication apps because it keeps a record of all the communication. And someone can't say, I didn't see your email. I missed your text because you sent 2 in a row. So I strongly recommend the parenting apps. And don't think just because you get along that someone is always up to something nefarious when there's a misunderstanding. There may be just that. There can be a misunderstanding. And when both people take the same week off at work to have the same children with them, that's a problem that you want to avoid, because all that's going to do is create conflict. Conflict is bad for the kids. Conflict is bad for you. And conflict may end up costing you a lot of money unnecessarily out of your pocketbook. So the best thing I can say is make sure it's in writing. It's clear. Everybody knows the dates. If you're traveling somewhere and you book your airfare, don't just rely on the date to deliver the travel consent to the other side at the last possible moment. Do it way in advance, because when you send them the travel consent, they say they're going to go sign it. That's also an acknowledgement that they know of your dates if you're going on a plane somewhere. Daphna, do you have anything you'd want to add?
No, it was good that you just touched on the last point about the travel consent, because we didn't talk about that. But that's very important. It always comes up very often as summer comes or any other vacation. And it's really important to have a paragraph in the agreement as to when it's going to be provided, by whom, who's going to have, when it's going to be signed, when it's going to be delivered back, because I've seen quite a number of issues I'm sure you've had with travel consents and people feeling really anxious because they haven't gotten it back or haven't, doesn't know yet because they have, plane tickets booked. So that's really important. As part of putting the proper paragraphs, as you said, in as to timelines, that's also a really good paragraph to make sure that's very clear as to the travel consent. So there's no miscommunications about that.
So Daphna, I wanted to thank you for joining us today. We hope our viewers have gotten an idea of how co-parenting during the summer works, and hopefully we didn't make it more complicated. If you're looking for assistance as part of separation or a divorce matter, feel free to contact us. Take a look at our website, separation.ca. The next Ask Andrew show will be on July 25th, 2023. If you have any requests or ideas for future shows, please email us at info@feldsteinfamilylaw.com. And thank you for watching.